You have tried rules, you have tried promises, you have tried sticky notes on your monitor, accountability partners, and trading plans you wrote on Sunday night and abandoned by Tuesday afternoon. None of it has worked, and let me tell you exactly why. Every single one of those attempts failed for the same reason you made the decision to follow them while you were calm, and you broke them while you were activated. The version of you that wrote the rule is not the same version of you that sits in front of a live market with a losing position and a racing pulse. Mark Douglas recognized early in his career that this split between the rational trader who plans and the emotional trader who executes is the central problem of the profession. Not strategy, not market knowledge, not analysis. The gap between who you are at your desk on a Sunday evening and who you become at 10:30 on a Tuesday morning with 2 consecutive losses on the screen, that gap is where accounts go to die. But here's what most people miss. The solution to that gap is not more discipline. It is not trying harder to be the Sunday night version of yourself during live trading. That is a battle you will lose every time because you are fighting your own neurobiology. The solution is a single habit, 1 5-minute practice that removes the need for in-the-moment discipline entirely. It makes overtrading structurally impossible, not psychologically difficult. Structurally impossible. And that distinction changes everything. Before I explain it, though, I need you to understand something about your own behavior. Because if you do not see the pattern clearly, you will dismiss this habit as too simple. And it is simple. But simple is not the same as easy, and it is definitely not the same as obvious. Let me describe what happens inside your mind during a trading session, and I want you to notice how precisely this matches your experience. You sit down, the market is about to open, you feel sharp, focused, ready, you have your levels marked. You know what you are looking for, and in that moment you genuinely believe you will be disciplined today. This time will be different. Then the first 30 minutes pass. Maybe your setup does not appear. Maybe it appears, but you hesitate, and the entry moves without you. Now something shifts. You are no longer the calm, prepared trader who sat down 20 minutes ago. You are a person who just missed something. And missing something activates a part of your brain that has nothing to do with trading strategy. It activates the part that hates being left behind, the part that needs to participate, the part that tells you the next one might be your only chance today. So you loosen your criteria. Just slightly. That level is close enough, that pattern is similar enough. You take a trade that you would not have taken at 9:25, but at 10:15 it feels justified, it feels rational. And this is the most dangerous part. It does not feel like you are breaking a rule. It feels like you are adapting, being flexible, reading the market. Mark Douglas spent years documenting exactly this progression in the traders he worked with. He found that almost none of them experienced their overtrading as impulsive. In the moment, every extra trade felt logical. Every deviation from the plan felt like a reasonable adjustment. The rationalization was so seamless, so automatic, that the trader did not even know it was happening. They were making emotional decisions and experiencing them as analytical ones. And by the time the session was over and the fog cleared, they were staring at 8 or 12 trades they never planned to take, wondering what happened. Sound familiar? I have seen it 1,000 times. And the pattern is always the same. Now here is the critical question. If you cannot trust your in-the-moment judgment, if your brain is capable of making emotional decisions and disguising them as rational ones, then how do you solve this? You cannot solve it by trying harder to be rational in the moment. That is like telling an alcoholic to just have one drink. The solution has to operate on a different level entirely. And it does. Here is the reframe that will change your trading career. Stop trying to make better decisions during the session. Start making all of your decisions before the session. Every single one. Before you feel anything, before the market shows you anything. Before your ego gets involved. Before your survival instincts activate. Before the version of you that cannot be trusted takes control. This is not just advice. This is a principle that Mark Douglas considered foundational to professional trading. The idea that a trader's job is not to react to the market in real time, but to define in advance the exact conditions under which they will act, and then simply execute what has already been decided. No interpretation, no flexibility, no adaptation. Execution of a pre-existing decision. That is it. That is the entire job. And the habit that makes this real, the single daily practice that converts this principle from an idea into a lived behavior, is what I call the pre-session commitment protocol. Let me be very specific about what this is, because I do not want you to confuse it with a trading plan. You probably already have a trading plan. A trading plan is a document. The pre-session commitment protocol is an act. It is something you do physically with your hands every single morning before the market opens, and it takes 5 minutes. This is non-negotiable. Here is the protocol. You sit down at your desk at least 15 minutes before the session begins. You open a blank page paper, not a screen, and I will explain why in a moment. And you write 3 things. The first thing you write is your setup sentence. This is one sentence, and I mean one sentence, not a paragraph that defines the only trade you are allowed to take today, not your favorite setups, not your strategy manual. One sentence describing one specific pattern on one specific time frame at one specific type of level. Let me give you an example. Today I trade only bearish pin bars on the 1-hour chart at the weekly resistance level. That is your setup sentence. If the market offers a beautiful breakout on the 5-minute chart, that is not your trade today. If a trend continuation sets up on the 4-hour chart, that is not your trade today. Your trade is a bearish pin bar on the 1-hour chart at weekly resistance. Everything else is someone else's trade. I know what you are thinking. You are thinking that limiting yourself to one setup means missing opportunities. And you are right, you will miss opportunities. But here is the question you need to ask yourself. How many of the opportunities you took last week were actually your setup? Be honest. How many were real, planned, high probability trades, and how many were impulse clicks dressed up in analysis? If the answer is less than half, then you are not missing opportunities by restricting yourself. You are avoiding traps. The second thing you write is your trade cap. This is a single number, the maximum number of trades you will take today. Write it in large, clear handwriting, not a range, not 2 to 4, a number, 2 or 1. I would argue that for anyone who struggles with overtrading, this number should be 2 or fewer until the habit is cemented. You can always increase it later. You cannot undo the damage of increasing it too soon. The third thing you write is your emotional state score. Before you look at a single chart, you rate your current emotional state on a scale from 1 to 10. 1 means agitated, distracted, angry, anxious, exhausted, or otherwise compromised. 10 means calm, clear, focused, neutral. You write the number down, and here is the rule. If your score is below a 6, you do not trade today. Period. You watch, you study, you review, but you do not put money at risk. Now I know what you are thinking. You are thinking, I will just give myself an 8 every day so I can trade. And if that is your reaction, then you have just proven exactly why this habit matters. Because the instinct to game your own self-assessment, to lie to yourself so you can trade, is the same instinct that makes you overtrade in the first place. It is the need to participate overriding your honest evaluation of your readiness. Notice that instinct. Sit with it, and then write the real number. After you write these 3 things, the setup sentence, the trade cap, and the emotional state score, you do one final thing. You sign it. Your name, today's date. Like a contract, because that is exactly what it is. It is a contract between the rational version of you and the emotional version of you. And the rational version gets to set the terms, because the rational version is the one sitting at the desk right now before the session, before the feelings start. I want to explain why this is on paper, not on a screen. Paper is physical. It exists in the room with you. When you feel the urge to take a trade that violates your contract, that piece of paper is sitting on your desk right next to your keyboard with your handwriting and your signature on it. It is much harder to ignore a physical document you signed than a note in a digital app. The paper makes the commitment tangible. It makes breaking the contract feel like what it actually is, a broken promise to yourself. Now, let me talk about what happens during the session, because this is where most traders think the habit falls apart. The market opens, things move, and inevitably, you will see something that is not your setup, and your brain will generate a reason to take it. Your brain is extraordinary at this. It will find a justification for any trade if you let it look long enough. So you need a tool for that exact moment, the moment when the emotional trader tries to override the rational trader's contract. I call it the cold test. And it is one question. If I had no position, no recent trade, no recent loss, no recent win, and someone handed me this chart with no context, would I take this trade based solely on my written setup sentence? That is the question, and you must answer it honestly. If the answer is no, if the only reason this trade looks appealing is because you are bored, or down on the day, or feeling like you need to participate, then it is not a trade. It is a craving. And you do not act on cravings. You observe them, you let them pass, and you wait. I know what you are thinking. You are thinking that in the heat of the moment, you will not be able to pause long enough to ask yourself this question. And you might be right at first. The first few days, the urge might override the question. But here is what happens if you keep showing up to the protocol every morning. The act of writing, physically writing your setup sentence and signing your name begins to create a psychological anchor. Over days and weeks, that morning ritual becomes part of your identity. You become a person who makes pre-commitments. And the stronger that identity becomes, the harder it is to violate the contract, because violating it is no longer just a broken rule. It is a contradiction of who you are. That is the mechanism, not willpower. Identity. You do not stop overtrading because you try harder to resist. You stop overtrading because overtrading stops fitting who you have become. But the habit is not complete without one final piece, the post-session audit. And this is where the real transformation compounds. At the end of every session, you take your signed contract and you answer 4 questions. Did every trade I took match my setup sentence word for word? Did I stay within my trade cap? Was my emotional state score honest? Did I pass the cold test on every entry? You score yourself. 4 out of 4 is a perfect session. 3 out of 4, you have work to do. 2 or below, you need to examine what happened with brutal honesty. And here is the key. The score has nothing to do with whether you made or lost money today. A day where you followed the contract perfectly and lost $50 is a 4 out of 4. A day where you broke the contract and made $200 is a failure. You must train yourself to evaluate sessions this way, because if you tie your adherence score to your P and L, you will unconsciously adjust your behavior to chase profit rather than process. And chasing profit is exactly how you got into this mess. Your results are downstream of your beliefs and your behavior in the moment. That has always been the core insight, the idea Mark Douglas returned to again and again. And it is the reason tools like the Speculator's Journal exist. A journal that tracks not just your trades, but your emotional state, your adherence, the patterns in your own behavior over weeks and months, gives you a mirror that willpower alone never could. It turns the invisible into something you can actually examine. There is a link in the description if that interests you. But whether you use it or use a sheet of paper, the practice is what matters. You must audit yourself daily. Now, I know what you are thinking. You are thinking, this is just journaling. I have heard this before, but it is not just journaling. Journaling, the way most traders do it, is a recording exercise. You write down what happened. This is different. This is a compliance audit against a pre-signed contract. The contract is what makes it different. Without the contract, there is nothing to measure against. You are just writing down trades. With the contract, every entry you made is either compliant or non-compliant, and that binary distinction makes self-deception almost impossible. You cannot fudge a yes or no question the way you can fudge a narrative journal entry. Let me give you a complete example so you can see how this plays out in practice. It is Tuesday morning. You sit down at 7:45. You open your notebook. You write, setup sentence. Today, I trade only double bottom reversals on the 30-minute chart at the daily demand zone. Trade cap, 2. Emotional state, 7 slept well, no carryover frustration from yesterday. You sign it, you date it, you set it on your desk. The market opens. At 9:50, you see a strong momentum candle breaking above a consolidation range. It is not your setup. Your hand twitches. You glance at your contract. You apply the cold test. Would you take this trade if you had no context, no positions, and were judging solely by your setup sentence? No. It is a momentum breakout, not a double bottom at a demand zone. You let it go. The candle runs 40 points without you. You feel the sting. You let that pass too. At 11:15, a double bottom forms at a level that aligns with your daily demand zone. You take the trade. It hits your stop for a small loss. You feel the pull to take another trade immediately. You apply the cold test. There is no second double bottom forming. You close your charts. End of session. You pull out your contract. Did my trade match the setup sentence? Yes. Did I stay within the trade cap? Yes. 1 trade out of 2 allowed. Was my emotional state score honest? Yes. Did I pass the cold test? Yes, I declined the breakout and declined the urge to re-enter after the loss. Score, 4 out of 4. A perfect session. You lost money and it was a perfect session. That is the shift. That is everything. And here is what happens when you do this for 30 consecutive trading days. You start to notice something that has never happened before in your trading career. The urge to overtrade gets quieter, not because you suppressed it, because the identity of the person who writes and signs a contract every morning is fundamentally incompatible with the behavior of clicking impulsively. The two cannot coexist, and over time the identity wins. It always wins, because identity is deeper than behavior. Behavior flows from identity, not the other way around. Let me bring this together. 1 habit, 5 minutes every morning, 3 written commitments, setup sentence, trade cap, emotional state score, signed, dated, physical paper on your desk. During the session, 1 question, the cold test. After the session, 1 audit, 4 questions, compliance score. That is it. That is the habit that makes overtrading nearly impossible. Not because it gives you superhuman willpower, not because it removes the urge. The urge will still come, but because it creates a structure that makes violating your own commitments visible, undeniable, and increasingly incompatible with who you are becoming. Mark Douglas always maintained that consistency is not about intensity of effort. It is about the quiet, repeated alignment of your behavior with what you have already decided is true. Not reacting, not adapting on the fly. Executing a plan that was made before emotion entered the room. This habit is the most direct path to that kind of consistency I have ever seen. It is the simplest thing you will ever do in your trading career, and if you do it every single day, it will be the most transformative. 6 months from now, the signed contracts will be stacked in a pile on your desk. You will flip through them and see a record not of your trades, but of your transformation. You will see the early days when your adherence was shaky, when you scored 2 out of 4 and had to face the truth about your own behavior. And you will see the later days, week after week, when the scores were 4 out of 4 and the urges barely registered and your trading felt like the quietest, most boring thing you have ever done. And that boredom will be the proof that you have changed. If you want to take this deeper, if you want to track your emotional state, your adherence patterns, and your behavioral evolution over weeks and months in a way that shows you what no single day's journal entry ever could, the Speculator's Journal is built for exactly that. It takes the self-observation Mark Douglas taught and turns it into something you can see unfolding across time. The link is in the description. But the starting point is a blank piece of paper, a pen, and 5 minutes of honesty before the market opens. Start tomorrow, sign the contract, and let the habit do what willpower never could.